Man, I really wanted to get away from video game reviews because of the hours of time that I have to put in the game before I can even start writing. But then a certain game came along and grabbed me by the collar and whispered, "Hey you, put everything down and look at me." And damned if I didn't listen, because every so often a game crawls out of the algorithmic sludge, past the bloated live service parasites, the battle royale vomit, the seasonal skin pyramids, the predatory monetization schemes. It reminds you what this medium can be when it's made by humans chasing a vision instead of quarterly profits. So first, a little about me. I have virtually no time for video games anymore. Between clocking 40 to 50 hours a week at work, keeping a marriage together, and raising a 4-year-old who treats sleep like it's an optional DLC, and juggling a grab bag of other time-sucking hobbies, my free hours are about as plentiful as polite disagreements on Twitter. Sorry, X. And yet, I still adore video games. Always have. They are by far my favorite way to experience a work of fiction. Above movies, novels, TV shows, comic books, any of it. They're the only medium where you actually do the thing instead of watching someone else, and so become totally immersed in its world. So quitting entirely was never really on the table at all. So a couple years ago, I had a revelation. No more filler. I made the decision to cut all the fat off of my gaming experience. Going forward, I would only play the absolute best of the best games. Those rare, critically acclaimed, industry-anointed masterpieces that everyone collectively loses their minds over. For a game to earn my precious scraps of time, it had to be exceptional in every possible way. Gameplay tighter than a tax audit, graphics that could justify my expensive GPU, an immersive world, a gripping storyline that reads like a great work of literature, voice acting so alive makes you forget that you're holding a controller, and music that could make a grown man contemplate the nature of beauty. In short, games that chase artistry over profits. And for the past few months, Expedition 33 has been that game. When I first learned the premise of Expedition 33, I was immediately intrigued. The game plunges you into a surreal, dreamlike version of 19th century France, a place that feels both elegant and unsettling. The world is haunted by the gommage, a phenomenon that strikes with relentless inevitability every year. Each year, the paintress awakens to mark a number on a distant monolith, a quiet but devastating pronouncement, the age of those who will be erased from existence. Counting down year by year, the inhabitants of the island of Lumiere live in constant, suffocating dread. Those who surpass the painted number don't simply die, they dissolve into flower petals, carried away by the wind, leaving only whispers and memory in their wake. Life here is a tightrope stretched over an abyss of inevitability, and every day is haunted by the ticking brush of fate. Having had to live with this reality for decades, at this point, the inhabitants of Lumiere have turned this annual event into a farewell ceremony where roses are gifted to those who will soon be disappearing. And the town itself is decorated in blooms, a delicate veneer meant to conceal the petals left behind when the lost are carried away by the wind. Orphanages are everywhere, a silent testament to the lives ended prematurely. The game begins just as the number 34 is about to kick down to 33, meaning that everyone of that age will vanish. You start off as 32-year-old Gustave, a man on his way to gift a rose to Sophie on the day of her gommage. Through their interactions, it's clear that the two were in a former relationship, and though they have been broken up for 4 years, still seem to be very much in love. Exploring the prologue area, you get to piece together what's going on. They seem to have only broken up due to a disagreement about having kids. Sophie didn't want to bring kids into a doomed world because no matter what, they would have been orphaned at the age of 6, and they themselves would never get the chance to live beyond 21. Gustave, on the other hand, ever the optimist, wanted kids anyway, and was certain that they would find a way to break this cycle. It's a mature, morally heavy concept. The game doesn't spoon-feed you any of it. You are left to piece together the emotional puzzle yourself, wandering through memory, conversation, and subtle environmental cues. It's both beautiful and brutal, immersive storytelling that respects your intelligence and refuses to relent. On the day of the gommage, Gustave bids farewell to his former lover, Sophie, who is 33 and perishes along with everyone else of the same age. The scene hits hard. The music and the cinematography really sell the depth and seriousness of it all. And so, with only a year left to live, Gustave joins Expedition 33 in hopes of slaying the Paintress. Every year they send out an expedition to slay the Paintress after the gommage. So far, none have returned. The expedition traditionally composes of those on their final stretch of their allotted years. This year is joined by one glaring anomaly, 16-year-old Maëlle, a sharp-eyed oddball whom Gustave has taken something of a foster parent role to. Her presence upends the grim predictability of the mission. The expedition sets out to confront the Paintress and finally break the cycle. There is little hope beyond making it a fraction farther than the last team, each prior mission leaving behind scraps and journals and clues like breadcrumbs through a cemetery. But things fall apart almost immediately. A white-haired man, clad in the same expedition uniform, appears on the beach and methodically wipes out almost the entire team. Which leaves you like, what the fuck? He's obviously far older than anybody should be, given the relentless toll of the gommage. So how is he still alive? Nearly everyone is wiped out. Having narrowly escaped with his life and surrounded by the bodies of his comrades and former expeditions, Gustave contemplates ending it all now and taking his own life. Dude, we are only 30 minutes into the game and this shit has gotten really dark. By this point, Expedition 33 has already shoved its grim, unflinching tone in your face and isn't pulling any punches. What a hook. By the time the beach massacre ends and Gustave is left bruised, bewildered, and clinging to life, the narrative has done its job. It has you. You are invested. You care. You fear. And that, my friends, is the precise moment the game hands you the keys. That's as much of the storyline as I'll discuss. Suffice to say, it's packed with twists and turns and surprises you won't see coming, and I have no intention of spoiling a single one. I will say that the story continues to get more and more weird, more and more complex, more and more mystical, and really sad, just heartbreaking. During my playthrough, I've literally laughed out loud and cried. Well, maybe not full-on sobbing, but like tears in the corner of my eye. The kind that creep up unannounced. The silent betrayal of my own eyes when a story manages to claw its way past my sarcastic defenses. That's how good it is. But none of that matters without voice actors that can sell it.
Hey, you holding up? We're almost there.
Holding up. Everywhere we go, just death. Death and more death. Everywhere we go, just death. I don't want to see that anymore.
Luckily, we've got the girl who played Shadowheart. We've got the guy who played Smeagol in Lord of the Rings. How is it that all of these voice actors look like the character they played? Anyway, Clair Obscur, Expedition 33, isn't just a game about trekking across a doomed continent and defeating dream monsters with glowing magical gadgets. It's a game having a full-on existential crisis in real time. It's basically a Renaissance painting that woke up one morning, stared itself in the mirror and whispered, "I can't keep living like this," and then decided to turn itself into an RPG. Underneath the combat and the magical artsy apocalypse, Expedition 33 is constantly gnawing at deeper questions. Like, is rebellion noble when failure is guaranteed? Is survival meaningful when survival is only temporary anyway? What does it mean to move forward when the future is a countdown? It's a story obsessed with the overlap between personal grief and cosmic inevitability. Characters aren't just fighting monsters, they're fighting memory, guilt, identity, the lies they tell themselves to get through the day, the masks they wear when the truth would flatten them. The narrative keeps pulling the cast into these collisions between who they think they are and who they actually are. The whole thing is built on the philosophy of Clair Obscur, the artistic technique of dramatic contrast of light and shadow that painters use. And in this game, this contrast isn't just a stylistic flourish, it's the game's entire worldview. There's also a lingering tension between reverence and reinvention. It's constantly balancing nostalgia and subversion, tradition with disruption, the shadows of its inspirations with the light of its own ideas. It's good, man. It's really good. Now, let's talk about the gameplay. Combat is turn-based, but with a twist. Quick time mechanics during your opponent's turn. So press the right button at precisely the right moment, and you can dodge or parry an incoming attack. Nail a successful parry and follow it up with a counterattack, and it's pure catharsis. Your pulse races, your fingers tingle, and for a moment you feel like you might actually be a hero, rather than a stressed out adult with too many responsibilities. I'll admit, if you asked me during my first couple of hours, I might have shrugged and rated the combat like a 5 out of 10. Clunky, unfamiliar, little intimidating, but after sinking more time into it, and after learning the rhythm, the nuance, the almost dance-like precision of it all, now it earns a solid 9 out of 10 for me. Every parry lands like poetry. Every well-timed counterattack feels like a tiny personal triumph. The system feels both nostalgic and fresh. There's a hint of Final Fantasy in its structure and pacing, yet it carries a modernity all its own. It's funny that this game somehow combines the elements of the last 2 single-player games that I've played all the way through. That would be the turn-based elegance of Baldur's Gate 3 and the reflexive tension of Black Myth Wukong. 2 games I loved for entirely different reasons. And somehow it works. The combat doesn't just feel like mechanics, it feels like expression, like the game trusting you to find the poetry and violence and timing, and rewarding you when you do. Of course, there are plenty of RPG character building elements to occupy the analytical side of my brain. Each playable character has a completely unique mechanic to them, and unlockable skills in the skill tree are completely different for each character. Of course, there are attribute points that you can spend with level ups that affect the character's base stats, different weapons to equip, and then there are Pictos and Lumina, which this part's a little bit confusing at first. So Pictos are special items you equip to characters, but unlike ordinary trinkets, each Pictos comes with a Lumina, a passive bonus that can tilt the scales in your favor, as well as usually some sort of buff to base stats. Once a Pictos has been mastered by having it equipped through 4 combat sessions, that buff can now be granted as Lumina. So you can unequip the Pictos, equip a different Pictos, and then still get that buff, the passive buff, by spending Lumina points. Once a Lumina is unlocked, it's no longer chained to the Pictos that it was first equipped to. It can be reassigned to anyone on your roster, giving you maximum flexibility. Suddenly your roster becomes a sandbox of strategic possibilities, or maximum opportunities for min-maxing, if that's your thing. It's great, but I can find a few places to nitpick. Party size is maxed out at 3 at a time, and equip skills are maxed out at 6. I would have liked to have access to a larger roster of skills for more variation, given that there are so many skills in the game that it makes it feel like a shame that you're only going to be able to equip 6 of them per character. But then maybe that would have made the player too OP. Also, many of the options for aesthetic customization are just too silly for the dark tone of the game. Watching a serious cinematic when your character has ridiculous hair and a bathing suit on is immersion breaking for me. A few more non-silly options would have been preferable to me. And also, this is where I need to be honest for the sake of the scientifically curious. The difficulty curve in the mid to late game takes a bit of a nap. Not a full coma, but definitely a do not operate heavy machinery situation. Early on, the game gives you the impression that you'll need to master character builds and Twitch perfect parries to survive. In reality, you can pretty much coast by either one. Really just dodging. If you can dodge consistently, any build that you do is pretty viable. It's like being told you need to learn French before visiting Paris, only to discover everyone speaks English and half of them are too tired to judge you anyway. Despite the game offering a respec system, I never once felt compelled to use it. And I just sprinkled attribute points around, whatever seemed good at the time, and it really didn't matter. Late game skills aren't inherently that much better than early game ones, thanks to AP cost and how the damage scales with level, even on the early game skills. And I never once had to Google like OP character builds, which is something I've done in other RPGs. Pretty much any build works, as long as you can avoid getting hit on a regular basis. In fact, somewhere around the midpoint, something shifted. I don't know if it was muscle memory, subliminal training, a mild disassociative episode, but suddenly I learned how to parry consistently. Not intentionally, not proudly. It was like my brain quietly installed a firmware update without telling me. I just locked my eyes into a soft, unfocused stare, letting my vision blur, and watched my enemies only through my peripheral vision, using sound cues more than sight. At that point I realized I was parrying everything effortlessly. It felt like I'd unlocked Ultra Instinct. Fortunately though, after the main storyline is concluded, there are still plenty of very high difficulty optional dungeons to explore. Oh, and before we move on, we need to address the elephant in the room, or rather, the complete lack of one. There's no minimap in this game. None. In dungeon areas, there's not even a faint little compass to soothe your directionless anxiety. For some players, that's a deal breaker, and honestly, I get it. We've been conditioned to rely on minimaps so completely that playing without one feels like you're suddenly blind. I had some training, thankfully, in Black Myth Wukong, because that game launched without a minimap as well, and surviving that experience must have rewired something in my brain, because now I actually prefer it. When a game does have a minimap, I catch myself staring at it like a GPS zombie, navigating icons rather than worlds. Without one, you're forced to actually pay attention to where you are, to notice landmarks, to remember routes, to engage that ancient bit of gray matter responsible for spatial awareness, instead of outsourcing it to a corner of the HUD. And weirdly, it feels good, liberating even. You start to think in real space again. Like, okay, that path curves back around toward the courtyard, and that statue means I'm close to the square. It's how we navigate the real world without a blinking dot to reassure us. It's a small change, but it makes Clair Obscur feel more immersive, more tactile. You're not just moving through a painted dream, you're finding your way through it. Though, I completely understand if you disagree with me on this one. Graphics. Despite what some people will tell you, graphics are important to a video game. That doesn't necessarily mean they need to be realistic, but art style and direction are important to immersion. Aesthetics do more than please the eye, they convey emotion. A muted gray wasteland whispers exhaustion and grief. A riot of colors screams tension, hope, or chaos. The art style is a silent storyteller, setting your gut on edge or calming it, long before anyone utters a single line. And Expedition 33 uses these principles to great effect. Landscapes especially are beautiful both on a technical level and on a design level. The game deserves credit for how consistently it keeps your eyes entertained. It does a fantastic job of presenting new and intriguing environments for you to explore. Some of these are relatively grounded. The game opens in a bustling 19th century city, all cobblestone streets and stuff, but as you press onward, things start to drift gloriously off the rails. You find yourself wandering through coral-like landscapes that look entirely underwater, though you're somehow still breathing air, and crimson forests and just wild stuff. Each area feels distinct, stitched together with its own unmistakable visual identity, enough that you could probably identify where you are just by the color palette alone. The battle sequences are another visual high point. Attacks flare with sharp bursts of light and cinders, particle effects roar across the screen, and the camera swings dramatically to make every action feel like a finishing move. Even the menus, those neglected corners of most game, are slick and tactile, like flipping through a designer's sketchbook. The cinematics have great direction as much as any Hollywood film. Though, I have found problems. I've played this game across several machines, and every now and then I'd find myself diving into the graphic settings trying to fix something that didn't look quite right. Occasionally, the visuals would look just a bit too blurry, not enough to ruin the experience, but enough to make me question whether it was an artistic choice or if the game was somehow rendering at the wrong resolution. There's also this odd artifacting when you spin the camera around the character, a sort of visual hiccup that I've seen creeping into a lot of modern titles. I suspect it's something to do with DLSS doing some kind of digital witchcraft in the background, and I would expect something like that to happen with fast camera movement with frame gen turned on, but I never use frame gen. I've been noticing it in Unreal 5 titles specifically, so maybe it has something to do with that, but who knows. Maybe somebody can leave a comment if they know what's going on with that. And here's a quick peek at the graphic settings that I play on my 5070 Ti. And while we're at it, facial expressions and cutscenes would sometimes look a bit off, occasionally veering into uncanny valley territory. Nothing horrendous, but it did seem like whatever facial tracking method they were using had room for improvement. Still, this is nitpicking in the purest sense. None of it breaks immersion enough to drag down the experience. In short, the graphics on a purely technical level are exactly what you'd expect from a modern release. Competently average, perfectly serviceable, but nothing outstanding. But the art direction, that's what's actually doing the heavy lifting here. It's stylish enough, weird enough, and deliberate enough to make the whole thing look far better than the raw tech would suggest. Now, the music. I can't talk about Expedition 33 without taking time to mention the music. It's a big part of the experience. Not to mention, several of the characters in the game are themselves musicians. Music isn't just background, it's the emotional architecture of the game. Most of the soundtrack is slow, wistful, and heartbreakingly beautiful. Music that doesn't so much accompany the game as haunt it. The piano lingers like a ghost over every scene, its notes drifting through Lumiere's pastel streets and bleeding into its painted skies. Even moments of triumph feel bittersweet, as though the music itself is apologizing for daring to be hopeful. There's a fragility to it, a sense that each melody might collapse under the weight of its own emotion, the sort of music that makes you nostalgic for moments you're still in. Even the hopeful tracks carry that undercurrent of mourning, as if the composer couldn't resist reminding you that joy, like everything else in this world, is on borrowed time. The music doesn't just complement the visuals, it completes them, tinting every battle, every quiet walk, every loss, with that fragile sense of inevitability that the game thrives on. Other parts of the trek lean into the grand melancholy of classical instrumentation and operatic vocals. The strings sigh with old-world sorrow. The piano tiptoes through the silence as if placing flowers on a grave, and then, from somewhere distant and divine, a voice begins to sing, in French, a mournful and elegant tune. Even at its most triumphant, the score carries an ache, as though the opera itself knows the ending is already written in tragedy. And then sometimes, the score flips on its head and dives straight into something almost heretical, a fusion of classical and electronic that shouldn't work but absolutely does. The strings don't just soar, they stab, cutting through the pulsing synths and glitchy percussion that gives the battle a frantic, modern energy. It can even get kinda heavy. I was in the flying waters when it first occurred to me how above average this video game soundtrack is. Expedition 33 is, quite frankly, a masterpiece. The game prods at the idea of resistance. Characters struggle not just against external cosmic force, but against the internal rot of hopelessness. It's bleak, yes, but it's also deeply human. And underlying all of this is the subtle critique of fatalism itself. And look, full transparency, there's probably a degree of recency bias influencing me. I'll own that. This game hit me at the exact right moment, in the exact right headspace. I'm sure that's inflating the glow a bit. And it's not some universal crowd pleaser either. If the words narrative-driven or turn-based combat make you recoil, then Expedition 33 may not cast the same spell on you. But if you do love that mix, if you live for story, atmosphere, character, and slow burn pleasure of strategic combat, then this thing aims straight for your soul. And if there's one last thing Expedition 33 should do, aside from emotionally wrecking you, it's serve as a wake-up call to the entire industry. This game wasn't born in some sterile boardroom full of marketing executives debating how many engagement loops they can cram in. It was made by a team just over 30 people. 30! And one of them was a dog. The lead developer walked away from Ubisoft, presumably tired of spending his creative energy designing new weapon skins for the 17th seasonal event, to make something actually human. Something the big devs would never have given the green light on. The lead writer plucked straight off of Reddit, with no experience. The composer discovered on SoundCloud of all places. And yet, this mismatched band of dreamers somehow delivered a vast, breathtaking world that fits into a mere 55 gigabytes of data, and sells for only $50. No seasons, no battle passes, no limited time events, no spending real money to get in-game currency designed to milk you dry, just a complete, handcrafted experience that values your time and your intelligence. Something the bloated AAA machine seemed to have completely forgotten how to do. From its haunting premise to its gut-punch storytelling, from combat that grows more satisfying the longer you play, to visuals that look like they were brushed onto your screen by a half-mad romanticist, the game radiates intent. Every note of its French opera-infused score, every stroke of color, every quietly devastating moment feels deliberate. And that's why Expedition 33 matters. It's proof that vision still trumps volume, that art can come from anywhere, and that 30-some passionate people with something to say can outshine a studio of hundreds chasing quarterly profit. So yeah, when I say this game reminded me why I love video games, I mean it. It's everything they used to be, before algorithms and monetization departments took the wheel. A work of art disguised as an RPG. A dream painted in pixels. And for someone who barely has any time to play anymore, this one was worth every stolen hour. Thanks for watching.